Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about a very specific report that just came out from a Bank of America analyst on Palantir. And we're going to go to it right now. Oops, that's a different podcast. Here we go. Now, this report was uniquely important primarily because of the facial recognition technology that Palantir might be able to help with. Well, what is facial recognition technology? First of all, it's very, very controversial. The idea that governments and state-based organizations are sort of tracking people's faces through the use of AI and machine learning to be able to identify patterns or crimes or things of that nature, it's pretty controversial, and most people get an icky feeling when they feel it. However, there are potentially benefits, which is why that technology has been created and it has been used to actually stop things that have happened before in the past. Now, the question is, how do we not violate people's privacy while trying to implement certain types of technology or understand how the technology operates? So analyst Marina Perez Mora, who has a buy rating on Palantir and a $13 price target, which we got a couple of weeks back from Bank of America, noted that a recent report from Governmental Accountability Office points out that 18 of 24 governmental agencies have started to use this type of facial recognition technology, or FRT, for a multitude of reasons, including digital access and law enforcement. So it's not only law enforcement, but there's other elements to it. But with increased concerns over the effectiveness as well as privacy and the potential for FRE to be compromised, which is the most controversial element of this type of technology, the U.S. needs oversight and regulation over how FRT is used, especially considering 13 of 14 agencies that used FRT to track criminal investigations did not monitor how their employees use non-federal FRT systems. So the organizations that are using FRT or facial recognition technology to stop crime and to use it in criminal investigations didn't really know how to monitor how their employees don't use those types of systems. And that's becoming a problem, because if you don't know how to monitor it, what bad implications could happen as a result of that? And that's where Palantir is likely to play a part. So Perez Mora wrote, Palantir's Foundry software offers granular access controls, oversight of data usage, and secures cross-agency collaboration. The company has made a point to highlighting the effectiveness of its software while still preserving individuals' fundamental rights. Before I continue into this is sort of the key point that I want to talk about it right here. So when it says, there's two elements to this. One is more of the philosophical side, one is the technical side. The philosophical side I've covered a lot on the channel. I've covered a lot just in terms of the content that I put out on dailypalantir.com. And it's the idea that Palantir was created to protect civil liberties in the face of an overarching government. So when you have a big government that's trying to do invasive things in the name of protection, and they're always going to say it's in the name of protection, it will still lead to some outcomes in which people will be violated, in which privacy will be violated. So if the government's going to use technology at scale to be able to do invasive things, which they need to use technology at scale in order to do some level of invasion, if that invasion doesn't end up becoming invasive, but still gets the result as if it were invasive, so really have your cake and eat it too, that's the best of both worlds, because you actually are able to detect the patterns and the things that you need to do to stop the bad things from happening, but you also are protecting civil liberties at the same time. Palantir software was created in 2001 or 2003 as a result in response to 9/11 to be able to potentially do that and allow cross-communication between different governmental agencies so that data is protected, civil liberties are protected, and individuals aren't compromised as a result of the state doing something broader for society. So when they say the granular, so first of all, that's the philosophical element of Palantir that's built into the product. And that philosophy, a lot of people say, they don't care about philosophy. It really matters. Just from a pure branding perspective, if companies know or governments know, like Europe, GDPR, privacy, data, ethics, all this stuff, they know Palantir is one of those companies that has built their technology and their culture of their company from the philosophical perspective that we should protect individuals' data privacy, something that other companies that are tech companies have not done, explicitly have not cared about. Well, that's a fundamentally different business relationship that they have with Palantir, and that leads to the potential likelihood that they can get more contracts that other companies in the world can't, not only because they don't have the best tech, but they don't have the philosophy to actually support that tech or the philosophy embedded within that tech to make it happen. So that's the philosophy part. The second part is this idea of Foundry software offers granular access controls, oversight of data usage, and secures cross-agency collaboration. So the cross-agency collaboration, this is something Karp talked about in 2009 on a Charlie Rose interview, which was like, you've got the FBI that has certain data, the CIA that has certain data. They're not allowed to show that data to each other, but they still need to be able to communicate. So how can you create a technology platform that allows them to see what they need to see and don't see what they don't need to see in a seamless, cohesive way? It's a very complicated thing to do. It sounds like an easy idea. It's a very complicated thing to execute. Palantir figured out how to execute it. They have an oversight of data usage, meaning you can understand where the data is coming from. And then you have access controls that are granular. Granular meaning you can get into the very nitty gritty outside of the big picture and see what's actually actually going on, and then monitor it accordingly and then move forward. So if there was any company to help monitor the ethics and privacy of facial recognition technology, it would be Palantir. Ironically, people have seen Palantir as this spyware-based firm that's like insinuating or doing all these bad things in the world or like causing all this invasive stuff. But when you realize, well, governments are going to do it regardless. You're not going to stop the government from doing it. And good luck, they have tanks and they have guns. The best compromise is to have a technology company implemented in the government so it's done in the most effective way and it's done in the way that least violates people's privacy, if anything doesn't violate their privacy at all because of the technology that they're using. That is what we should be campaigning for when it comes to a company like Palantir, especially if the technology is useful. And like AI is super useful, but it needs to be understood because there's a lot of bad things you could do with AI. Does that mean all companies are not going to use AI? Obviously not. You need to use AI, but how do you do it in a more ethical way? In addition, Perez Mora highlighted a recent interview from Palantir Chief Executive Alex Karp. This was the Aspen's interview for 53 minutes, where she talked, in which the CEO mentioned the company has taken tremendous strides to ensure its platforms are applied ethically, going so far as to note that it turned down projects that don't align with the company's values. This was the Muslim database that Trump was saying that we should create a database of all the Muslims in the United States. Palantir, I believe he said, was asked to even think about doing that, and they rejected it immediately, which makes sense because they could have built it out. I mean, it's just a database at the end of the day. They could have built out the technology to make that happen. They decided not to do that for obvious reasons. And that shows you, again, this is a particular different type of company. It's not just a company that's going to take money for money's sake. Late last month, Palantir Technologies was awarded a contract along with Raytheon Intelligence and Space to develop a prototype for the U.S. Army's Tactical Intelligence Targeting Access Node program. We know they got that ability to compete for that prototype primarily because of how strong their technology is and their path to becoming the world's first software prime. So those are my overall thoughts on this situation. Look, I think the $13 price target, it's cool. I mean, Palantir just closed above 10, but the stock price to me, given the macro, is still pretty irrelevant. I like to see how the company is being used in very specific use cases. You've got Meta Constellation in space. You've got the Army Titan program. You've got stopping climate change with Trafigura, which is this climate warehouse thing that they're started this new partnership. You've got dealing with trash with the Rubicon. You've got so many different things coming at you, which is why I like putting my money here. And this is just another example of how their privacy and philosophy around the product can be utilized in different products in a meaningful way. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think about Palantir's ability to help with facial recognition technology. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.